Norfolk County is uniquely positioned in an amazing spot in Ontario with some of the best farmland, the best soil, the best crops, as we are top producers not only in Ontario but Canada-wide, ginseng, pumpkins, tart cherries, strawberries, and so much more. My next guest is such an amazing resource for all things agriculture. I love tapping into what he brings to the table. He's always educating me. He's always challenging the conversation, playing devil's advocate, bringing new perspectives forward. And he's not afraid of growth. And that's a timely conversation to have here in Norfolk County as we talk about growing, expanding our urban boundaries, and what that impact is going to be on our agricultural enterprises. I'm proud to call this next guest a friend of mine, and I can't wait for you to tap some of his perspectives on what he has to say about agriculture, family farms, growing a business, and so much more. Okay, welcome. So first question, who are you, what do you do, and why do the very few listeners that I have care?
I'm going to answer some of that. My name's Brett Schuyler. I am a farmer, but title president of Schuyler Farms Limited.
Very legit.
And which oversees packing apples, cherries, and employs a lot of people in this community and outside of this community. So why would someone want to listen to me? Well, because they like your podcast. I don't know.
We're hoping. Why they want to listen to you? Because we live in Ontario's garden, and you're the man. You've got a lot of really great information that you are always educating me on, and so we can educate the public on. And we're not talking like small scale operation. Like, you're a pretty humble guy, but it's been really a privilege actually to watch over the last few years you take on your leadership role in your family business and evolve it into something, really legit. I want to dig into that a little bit today and see how things are going for you. But so you are a farmer. That's what you like to call yourself, but you're not. So much more than that goes into the role that you have, and you're working on a big new project right now. Do you want to fill us in a little bit about that?
Yeah, there's different projects on the go, but a noticeable one is investing in controlled atmosphere apple storage, and new office building for all the people it's taking to make all this stuff happen. So been a lot of investment in people and talent and building up a team, and creating something a little bit bigger. Something pretty special there. So, and with that, you're building CA storage, controlled atmosphere storage, and because no one knows what that is you're able to adjust the atmosphere levels, oxygen and CO2 oxygen down to 2%, where normal air is 20%, but you stop the apple from breathing. So that we can eat apples all year round. Yeah, so you're making some significant investments to not just grow the produce, but it's a storage production, get the best return on your investment right here in Norfolk, which employs people, brings people to the farm for more than just labor of working the farm per se. It's a broad industry you're building out. Yeah, and now with all the apple packing, with everything involved in the farming business and the pack line and really the packing part of it, for full time year round people there, close to 100, depending how you count everybody, and then seasonally we're 400. Which is mostly through the farm worker program. So that's the people part of it is what's really, really fun. Yeah. And makes it worthwhile and gets you going, okay, this is something a little bigger, and let's make sure we can be an awesome spot. And growing up in Norfolk, you grew up on a farm. Your dad worked the farm. How far back does farming go in your family? And did you always know you wanted to be a farmer and grow a business like this, or what was that like? Yeah, so my dad and uncle, those were the owners of the business, and now it's my brother and myself as the owners. and they purchased the farm from my grandfather. And if you want to work it back, there was a Schuyler that came up shortly after 1812. So we're guessing they were for the Queen, and got out of the States and came up here.
Got a good deal on some land. That's history.
Yeah. So I mean, you could look at it that way. As a business, probably more truly a second generation business, but our goal is to make it a first generation business in the sense of reinventing of the things that make it first generation, because the normal story is the first generation builds, the second sustains, and the third sells.
Yeah.
So we just always got to keep being a first.
I like that.
Yeah. 'Cause you can.
That's cool. And so, not personal to your particular business and your family business, but like, what's going on, in your opinion, across Norfolk with family farms? Is that still a thing? Are they, being passed down? And I talk to a lot of farmers who are in favor of severances because of that exact reason. They want to sever an acre, build a house, have a, multi-generational property where family members can live and work the farm, or they can sever and sell the farm, but not have to lose their family home, whatever the case is. So I guess the question is, in your opinion, what's going on with family farming in Norfolk? Is it a thing still?
Yeah, of course. It is all, I think it'd be really hard pressed to find anything that's not a family-owned farming business. But what is happening is economies of scale and pushing bigger to survive in that. So as a general, farms are getting bigger, and you have to make that decision if you want to keep going with it. So they're scaling up. So there's less family farms all the time, but they're getting bigger, and then they start looking a little bit different at scale. Where we're talking about, we're talking now about our leadership team at the farm, and talking about our accountability chart and org chart, and it's still family business. It's just, the family kind of grows a little bit. You start getting some really, really good people locally that you're able to put good jobs out to and have a really good team. So it's changing. So the family farm, depends how you define it in that. It's changing. There's a lot less farms. So there's a lot less family farms, but
right.
It's because it's scaling up, and it kind of is what it is. And room for all sorts of different businesses in there in that, but as a general, there's a lot of pressure to scale up.
It's interesting though. So why would farms, some of these are loaded questions that I maybe know the answers, and some of them I genuinely don't know, and you're such a great resource for that. So why would farms in general, regardless if they're a family entity or not, why would they size up when, as I understand it, technology is so innovative that production and yields on the farms are, in some cases, can be double what they used to be back in the day? So what's the incentive to size up? Like, if the same parcel of land can now produce, let's just generalize and say, double a yield.
Tighter margins and survival. I as we're going to say, we want to stay in it. So if we use the kind of easy corn, soybean example, field crops, and that, if I'm going to run a combine to harvest that, right? So that's going to be 3,000 acres to run through that combine to make that viable.
Right.
On that easy example, but even on the orchard side, where not that long ago the average apple orchard in Ontario was around 20 acres, and that could sustain a family. Tighter margins, pressures to produce food more economically. That's, you're not supporting the family on that, or there's rare cases it's harder. So you plant more, you figure it out, you scale up, and just push it to tighter margins, and needing to be more efficient, needing to have, at the end of the day, that if it takes 100 acres maybe to feed that family.
Yeah.
Support it and figure out how to make it happen. And the technology and everything allows you to scale up more, allows you to do more work cheaper. I don't want to take away from things, but at the end of the day,
find the efficiencies and
Yeah, largely you can look at things that, the price of the commodity may have not changed a whole lot over 30 years. Last few years things have gone up with the post-COVID effect, but there's something like juice apples was 6 cents from 1980 to 2015, and inflation and everything else was happening there, but the price of the apple stayed the same, so you have to squeeze that out somewhere.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Also, I learned something new about you recently, and I guess I should fact check it. Do you sell your apples to McDonald's?
Indirectly. And
That's so cool.
There's a cool story there. So slicer apples, we call them, and that, but those nice little packs, and that's a big business. It's a big deal. And it was a really big deal when someone at McDonald's got the idea that they were going to put cantaloupe and pineapple and give that instead of apples, because that, let's say that was for Norfolk alone, let's say that was 600,000 pounds of apples that went to McDonald's slicer apples. And that was just gone last year, as McDonald's had to learn that cantaloupe and pineapple stock.
Yeah, comparatively.
Yeah, so they're going to go back to apples.
Good for them, unless in the hard way.
Yeah. Well, these are factors that all of a sudden, okay, that's gone. That market's gone for a year, and figure it out.
Crazy, because no kid wants cantaloupe or pineapple or apples in their Happy Meal, but that's really cool.
Apples sit better, are a little easier on the logistics, so I think that's what is bringing them back.
Yeah.
Pineapples get soggy pretty quick.
Yeah. Well, that's fair. Yeah, I think that's really cool, and it speaks to, again, you are humble, but that's really cool. That makes me really proud of you, really proud of Norfolk, really proud of our industries here. We're not small time.
If we want to brag,
let's brag.
Yeah, apples in Norfolk County, feel very confident to say 80 million pounds of apples grown in Norfolk County.
Wow.
This is a lot of pounds. That's
a lot of pounds.
Yeah, and that's
a lot of storage.
Yeah, it's a lot of storage. It's a lot of investment and money being spent in this community, and it's significant local jobs.
Yeah.
It's a good thing.
And shout out to you, because you are silly to even need to give a shout out on this topic, but you are such an advocate for farm workers of all stripes, and you are a housing advocate. You are just in general an ag advocate. I cannot stress it enough. I learned so much from you. And it's just a no-brainer. I know it's not across the board, but you really treat everyone who participates, like you said, on the farm as a family member. And that's really true to even just seasonal workers. You're really leading by example. And so, again, another thing to really be proud of, having you here representing that in Norfolk County, because I know it's not the same across Ontario.
We don't exist without people to pick the apples, without people to do the work. And I look at that, if we didn't have the opportunity to bring up seasonal workers, then we'd also have to say goodbye to the 100 direct jobs and the rest of the feeder industries that support apple storages, that support the trucking and packing and moving and all these jobs. They don't exist if you can't harvest a crop. And it's something very, very proud of is the seasonal worker program and what it does for this community and what it does for the people coming up on it. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of cool stories there.
Yeah, there are. And I was lucky enough once to come and pick apples on your farm and learn about it. And for everyone listening, Brett had his kids out and they were helping. They were picking apples, and his daughter was picking apples, and she was tossing them into the bin. And she's what I would call a bruiser, an apple bruiser. And Brett's trying to have a conversation with me about agriculture, and without looking, he can hear his daughter throwing the apples into the bin, and he's just wincing every time she roughhouses an apple and bruises up an apple. So
in 2.5, she's learned since.
In her defense, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And also, I'll point out there, the different people for different jobs. But I think it's we're very lucky to have you as mayor. But you probably wouldn't cut it out in the election. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm glad you don't have to have that conversation.
I'll take it. I'll take a loss. That's fine. Okay, so I want to ask you a couple questions. You're a pretty smart dude, and you usually have your finger on the pulse, but you're also very busy. So are you up to speed with Norfolk County's growth plan and our urban boundary expansion that we're doing?
High level, I know that that we went through, I think, done the last zoning change, but I mean more that these things are happening or ongoing, but not that involved with it. And and a nice thing, thanks to COVID, I've stayed off of social media, so not really following things close, but more at a high level, know that some boundaries get adjusted here and there, and that there's a push for more housing in Canada.
Yeah.
But kind of stay out of the weeds.
Okay. So I want to ask you a couple questions, and I want to get, your farming, your agriculture perspective, but also just as a Norfolk resident, value your opinion. So chime in wherever you see fit. But I'm wondering what you have to say about a lot of the community narrative that I see out there is that people don't want to grow. And I understand that and I respect that. Change is scary and it's unknown, but the reality is we are growing. Canada is bringing in new community members every single day. The municipality has rules and regulations that we have to follow from a provincial mandate, and that's part of this growth plan. We are required to put together a plan to grow for the next 25 years. And Norfolk County is rural in nature. When you leave one of our urban centers, there's, a vast amount of hamlet space and ag land. And so because of that, we will always be adding agricultural land into our urban boundaries. That's just the facts of our layout. And in Norfolk County, as I understand it, most of our land is prime agricultural land. So as a farmer,
well, wait, but why you understand it to be prime agricultural land?
Yeah.
So tell me about that. Like, what's prime agricultural land?
Well, so as I understand it, I think I'm about to get schooled here in a minute, but as I understand it, there is a soil testing structure that planners use farmers use it as well, but the planning industry uses it to grade the quality of the soil. And it looks at the land and it identifies, also giving consideration to specialty crops, if the land can grow specialty crops. And at all cost, under the provincial planning policy statement, prime agricultural land should be protected and preserved. In Norfolk County, most parcels you look at, as per our planning staff, suggest that they are prime agricultural land. They have been graded and considered to be prime. We don't have subpar agricultural land in Norfolk. It's our sandy soil and so on and so forth. So you correct me where I'm wrong.
Well,
but on paper, we are prime ag.
So to me, when I hear prime agricultural land, I think that's the best agricultural land. This stuff has to be protected. This stuff just grows food without trying. That's what I think. That's what I think most people think. But in prime agricultural land, something I've observed is in maybe zoning is not the right word, but designation in Norfolk County, and I'm happy to be wrong, but I'm very confident on this. We have two types of land in Norfolk County outside of developed land. We have hazard land and prime agricultural land.
Facts.
It's one of the two. So that's what you can be. Once you get outside of the town, you can either be hazard land or prime agricultural land. So under that definition, and I believe there's history to this, that it was simple at the time, and it is hard to designate things right, but hazard land is mostly going to be when where there's a valley, maybe some floodplains, places that they don't want to put a building on, maybe.
You're certainly not going to put that into an urban boundary to develop on.
Yeah, the hazard lands, which can be valuable for different types of agriculture, for grazing, for different things. But in general, I see that it's where there's a lot of topography and a river running through. And then everything else is prime agricultural land. So, you literally have sand dunes in Norfolk County.
Yep.
That's a prime agricultural land. You get to the east end, you have heavy clay that you can't get into with a pickaxe. That's prime agricultural land. You have some pockets of silt loam that grow 250 bushel corn every year without trying. That's also prime agricultural land. So I think there's a bit of a misconception because we say, oh, that's prime agricultural land, we can't develop it. And I kind of go, well, we're not stopping the developing thing. We don't control that. If our number one concern was preserving the best farmland, well, there's a difference between these places, and and there's a lot of factors that go into saying and it's subjective to what prime agricultural land is. I'll hazard to say a sand dune with no organic matter that blows around. I'm going to say that in most cases it's pretty low value, and maybe a nice spot to put a house on.
So what should the test be in your opinion? Like whatever the system is that's regulated and graded Norfolk County dirt as prime ag, whether it is or isn't, what should the test be? Should it be left up to the agricultural community to say this is what the soil can do and here's the test to prove that measure? Or,
it would be subjective, and it would be making a decision as a county on if you wanted to go further to define it than saying everything's prime agricultural land. And that's a big exercise, and there's subjectivity to it. And then fundamentally, I can talk about how much we should protect this type of land and all that, but the whatever million people that are paying $1 million plus for a home because there's not enough, their opinion is probably a little different. Yeah. So I think the first question, I'm not answering your question, but it's kind of like, well, what do we want to do here? Because sometimes a piece of land, so we grow a lot of orchard. Orchard in general likes high ground, well drained, and there's near a lot of good orchard sites. There's towns. Yeah. And because building houses likes high ground that's well drained, they like to put a sewer pipe in that can run downhill to the plant. They like, so I can go and say, well, that should stay orchards. That's a beautiful orchard site, and I can feel that way, but it doesn't really matter. But because also we need houses too. So I've not answered your question.
No, it's interesting though, because we need housing. And I find, to be frank, I understand the let's stay the way we are, like what we know is comfortable and people like it. I get it. And
I can cut you off though. I like growing food though. And if I don't have any people to sell it to, then okay, so we're protecting this prime agricultural land. Great. But I am selfish too. I mean, I drive through Toronto and I think, oh my God, what an awful place. Like I would not want it. And then I go, wait, thank you everybody here for buying apples. And because what's the priority here in that? And I come back to the word smart planning, which is not clear. It's very gray, but how can we just make smart decisions? And probably density of housing comes into that conversation. Although everyone loves to have a nice rural lot on an acre, and also on that. So then I go, well, but I may have taken an acre of prime agricultural land, because everything's prime agricultural land, except for the hazard land, because I can't build a house on that. What a waste. Well, yes, but except for that person living there that is having maybe this great quality of life, and they have a garden, and they're healthier, maybe there's better economic, and like they're contributing to the tax base. There's all this, so there's lots of opinions and things to weigh out, and I have no sympathy for elected officials trying to find middle ground, help make decisions, and do smart planning. But as part of that smart planning, I mean, we can keep calling it prime agricultural land because that's a definition, but maybe just recognize that prime agricultural land is anything but hazard land in Norfolk County. So they're not all equal.
It's just so, I'm really enjoying this conversation. First of all, I always enjoy them. But second of all, because it would be easy for you to sit here and say, we have prime egg. We need to preserve it because I don't want people living near my farmland. That's going to cause me grief. Or I want to buy up this farmland later. Like, this is a business opportunity for me. And if it gets sold and built housing on it, I won't be able to buy that later. Or people from the city are going to come and give me grief about my farming practices as they encroach on my property. But instead you're saying, no, there's a common ground to be found here. I disagree with the definition. And, that again, eventually we will always be adding prime land into our urban boundary. That is just Norfolk's deal. And you're saying, basically, I guess you can confirm if you're saying this, that food security isn't an issue. Thank you for being around to buy food.
Yeah, thank you for buying food. And we want to talk about food security and stuff. And like, how about instead of 90% of the apple juice we're drinking coming from China, Poland, and South America, how about we start growing that here and give more opportunities to grow some higher value things and do that? Like, there's a lot to these topics. On the agricultural land one, the common story that gets pushed is we want no neighbors.
Yeah.
That's all. Like, and stop all development in the agriculture landscape. And I get that, especially if you got pig barns and different things. I mean, there's conflict.
Which is more Haldeman than Norfolk.
So Norfolk, that ship sailed in most places. It's still important, and it is part of when deciding where to put a new building, because minimum distance separation around, you can't put a pig barn so close. But
those practices already exist. There's already legislation about that.
Good stuff. But Norfolk County, the history is 50-acre farms with a house on them, and there's houses everywhere. I did an exercise and we are around there's houses everywhere, but we're around hamlets, we're around urban areas, we're all that. But I have over 300 neighbors, direct adjacent neighbors. Mm-hmm. I will tell you, there is one neighbor that gets upset with us. Mm-hmm. They got a bug about spraying, but the other 299, I swear, like, all the only contact we get is, hey, there were some people driving quads through the orchard, and we want to let you know because we enjoy having that there and that, and like you get a lot of really good neighbor stuff.
Hey, the sheeps are out.
Yeah,
they're out.
Get them out of my garden. Thank you. And don't get me wrong, it's there is conflict there, running sprayers, like the noise, all this, but
yeah.
There's conflict living in downtown Simcoe, downtown Delhi too. It's part of it, and that boat kind of sailed here, so we're used to it, and it's not all bad. But there's definitely a solid argument to not throw up houses everywhere. But we got a lot of spots in Norfolk where there's 4 houses along that road.
Yep.
So are the 5th and the 6th ones the problem ones? There is a difference between where you have it, where it is kind of preserved and you can do some of those uses, some of those animal livestock things. But yeah.
And I think the other thing too is, like, with this plan, it's the first time in Norfolk's history that we've taken large swaths of land and put them in because we have a comprehensive plan to grow, and Norfolk has never had that. And so when we talk about this piecemeal development here, there, and everywhere, these 4 houses there, or the 1 house over there, that's because we've never had this plan before. So is it a bit egregious for people to go, oh my gosh, look at the amount of farmland being put into the urban boundary? Yes. However, it's not just for housing. It's for parkland. It's for schools. It's for commercial. It's for job development. All of these things. So I guess on a high level, are you concerned? I did actually crunch some numbers. So, are you concerned that Norfolk's eliminating agricultural land? Does that keep you up at night?
It doesn't keep me up at night. I accept that I have very little influence and control on that. And yeah, sure, what I think, that's cool, but there's a lot more people than me. And, it's easy for me to say don't develop any land when I have a house.
When you have a roof over your head. Yeah. Not in my backyard.
Yeah.
You have a backyard.
Yeah, go to somebody. Yeah. Go somewhere else. So I'm not giving you a strong answer there. It just is. There's a lot to this topic in that. If we were really, really concerned about preserving high value land, and I don't know the way of doing it, whether you'd have to do it through professionals reports or all that, but I would argue, but it's subjective, but I know some farms around that are silt loam, some of the most valuable soils in Ontario. They are just beautiful market garden, sort of like just beautiful farms, and can grow just about anything. But they're prime agricultural land just as much as the sand dune. So they're not getting protected. They're not getting protected any different.
Yeah.
And there's a lot to go into that to say, well, because Brett said it was. Well, no, there's soil classification and all this, but somebody has to do that.
Yeah.
The provincial maps, they're done at such a huge scale. They can be useful for planning purposes, but there's, they can show, well, there's this type of soil there, but it won't show, this corner over here is hardly suitable for farming because it used to be a gravel pit. It won't show that.
Yep.
So there is
the whole swath of land isn't also, the same soil and the same productivity across the entire parcel, but you don't have the option to, build over there instead of here and maximize that land.
Yeah, and more variables. I'd say 100 years ago, most of Norfolk County would probably not have been considered prime land in terms of the people farming it. A term that gets thrown around with some of the older farmers is they talk about a jackrabbit having to carry a lunch going across Norfolk County because it all dry out and there's nothing to eat. Well, now you have irrigation.
That's cute.
Yeah, but without irrigation,
Yeah.
that, like, a lot of that stuff is not that exciting. I mean, so technology changes, things do change that we don't know. You don't know, is this going to be more valuable in the future or not?
Yeah.
So you don't know that.
So to produce some numbers, Norfolk County has 395,368.6 acres of land. And before we started our urban boundary exercise, we had 218,100 acres of farmland, which meant 55.16% of Norfolk County land pre-urban boundary exercise was farmland. We went through the exercise. We took out less than 1,000 acres, but I don't have the specific numbers, so I'm going to highball it just to be really transparent and say that we removed 1,000 acres of farmland, leaving us with 217,100 acres in Norfolk, which is 54.91% of Norfolk County still being farmland, an overall reduction of 0.25%. Yet there is a lot of this narrative online about how council is taking away the farmland. We're not following provincial guidelines because this prime ag land needs to be protected at all costs. And here we are talking about like how to maximize that land, looking at the soil, what each parcel does. So, but ultimately, we wouldn't have an urban boundary exercise if farmers didn't sell land. If they didn't sell land and or request for their land to go into the urban boundary. To be clear, council can say, hey, we're taking your land and putting it in the urban boundary. It doesn't mean you don't operate that land. It doesn't mean you don't own that land. We just can restructure that boundary line even though you didn't ask. In our case, we did not add any lands into the urban boundary that were not requested to be in. So why do you think farmers turn around and sell land at the end of the career?
Yeah. So first off, I had land on the urban boundary. So this is near deer, and I have done the process of not just sitting back, but letting it basically say, hey, if this wants to get developed, we wouldn't do everything we could to stop it. Throwing that in as information. the question is why people sell it. Well, you have a house, right, Amy?
I do. Yeah.
What could you sell that for today?
I think my neighbors sold less than a year ago for $925.
Yeah. So
It's not what I bought it for.
yeah. So that house, yeah, it sell for $925, and now something changes here, and somebody comes in. That's the nicest house. You have a lot of attachment to it. The best thing for that house is for you to live there and spend the rest of your life there. That's what you should do. That's what feels good. And somebody wants to buy it for $5 million tomorrow.
Yeah.
Well, you shouldn't sell it because you have a lot of history there.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the best use for that spot is your house. And like I know these aren't the same examples, but it's if somebody wants to pay a whole bunch of money for something and then you can use that, and now I go with the farming example. Oh, okay. Now I can use that and invest it into controlled atmosphere apple storage, new apple plantings, new housing, new pack line facilities. We can grow and use that to further the business.
Yeah.
Like you could say no, but it's a
great example because it personalizes the predicament that the ag industry finds itself in. And people are easy to judge and quick to judge and make comments online. But really, what would they do in the same situation?
Well, let's say apples are selling for $10 an apple. That's not right. Nobody can afford that.
Yeah.
So I guess I should go and say, no, it's $1 for everybody because this isn't right.
Yeah.
I don't like these. I mean, there's some pretty high moral grounds. And for those that say that I want to protect this as farmland for these reasons, that's great. There's opportunities to help with that. I can put agricultural conservation easements on properties. That's a thing. Mm-hmm. You can do these things, but also for me to expect somebody to do that is unrealistic.
Well, it's interesting because we really value in our society personal property rights and what people can do on their properties and how they should be able to, just execute what their wishes are. We talk about it with new businesses or whatever the case is. Personal property rights, you own it. It should be yours to decide what to do on it unless you have farmland, unless you have agricultural land. And even the government regulates that. So there's a lot of things you're not able to do on your land. I could, if I had a parcel big enough, come to Norfolk County Council and request to sever off some of it. Can you do that with your farmland?
Well, I can ask for anything, but the policies are pretty tough on it. I can sever a surplus house off under certain conditions. I can do boundary adjustments under certain conditions if I can show that it's a viable farm unit. So there's things you can do, but no, there are a lot of things you can't do. I've come to appreciate that as much as we can not like government rules and order. There's a reason we have this stuff, and we're trying to make the best decisions we can and trying to have the best policies we can, but we're not going to get it all right. But no, you're absolutely restricted. And that's not all bad. I'm restricted on when I can spray pesticides.
Yep.
I can say that's not right. I should be able to do whatever I want. Well, it impacts other people.
Yes.
So yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting as we go through and as I've learned over the years, the legislation and things that you can and can't do and this desire to protect all of our farmland here, which obviously for the record, I am in support of preserving.
To the segue on this, in agriculture school, one prof would do a comment about if you wanted to see, I think he used the term class 1 agricultural soils, but something like, these numbers are wrong, but it's just for the point of the story. 50% of the class 1, not prime, like the silt loams, these best of the best, well-drained silt loam soils in Ontario that you can see, let's say 50% of it, you can see from the CN Tower. You can't see the soil because it's underneath Toronto, but there's like, we're not doing that. So we're talking about going forward, but A lot of these communities were based around areas where farming was easy, and there was
So to play devil's advocate, let's not make Toronto's mistake. Let's save all of our farmland here in Norfolk. Let's not do what they did. We can learn from that. Save it all.
save it. Yeah, save it all. Maybe we could look at it. So I was saying class one. There's still owns all that. Maybe if we want to make a decision that should be prioritized, we could look at that, and that could be a discussion around if we want to protect certain types of soils more, be more rigid on. Because in that case, it's about some of that real, I was calling those real garden soils. These really, really easy to grow a whole bunch of stuff soils. But in the so let's protect everything. I mean, I hear you. That's like, let's stop growth. Let's stop more people coming in and all that. And I just got to remember that I wouldn't be here if they did that in the past. So it's a bit of a tough thing on just a discussion of how much growth do we want to have and how many homes and all that. That's a bigger one. But there is a push for a growth economy. Because people benefit in those economies, and we can have it. We can decide as a country to not grow, but we don't do that. And there's reasons, and it's not my choice. It's not your choice. But
deal with the facts at hand, and the facts are we're growing, and how do we want to grow, I think, is the better question, instead of let's not grow, or how do we stop growth?
Well, so I can try to stop it here so they can do more around or in Brant. I don't know. It doesn't solve the core issue. It'd say, well, we kept it out of our backyard. Congratulations.
Yes.
And there's pros and cons.
We're also keeping the jobs in the industry out, and we're becoming a bedroom community. And so like some of the stuff we just talked about, Canadian juice. We talked about immigration and growth. We've talked about temporary farm workers. We've talked about the provincial legislations, and certainly the municipal with zoning. How important is it to you to have all three levels of government working together to kind of combat the entire issue?
We got to do the best we can. There's a lot of complexities to make all three levels of government work together. Be very blunt, in my world, I don't get too far out of thinking about municipal politics just because my head's not ready for it. So I wish I had more to say on it, but there's just so much there that I get confused on and don't know. And I feel like if I have opportunity to impact anything, I got a better chance municipally than provincially and federally. So those are just thoughts and that, but it's a very safe thing to say in government, we need to do better all the time. And we're never going to be doing great, even if we are, because we can do better.
Well, I think it's a good benchmark in anything, and you probably bring it in your business as well, like continuous improvement, right? It can get a little scary if you sit stagnant, sit still, which is what Norfolk can't do in a growth situation.
And then the way I'm touching on some of this is we don't want to take that prime agricultural land, but we also don't want to put condos up by the water. We also don't want to, it's everything. We don't want to do everything. So it is tough, because how can you win?
Yeah, that's right.
I can't see a scenario where everyone's happy. That's not going to happen. So it's a tough job, and I guess the system is we have our elected officials to try to represent these views based on the votes they got to achieve something. But tell me what Norfolk wants.
Yes.
Because everyone has a different idea of that.
Yeah, it's something.
I'd put some focus on intensification, and some of those, to me, not knowing the issues there, some of those perceived wins as we're not going to stop development, but maybe we could do a better job of it. I mean, that to me is a fun one to talk about.
Use the land better, and instead of those single detached dwellings on every, chewing up a parcel of land for 20 houses as opposed to 45 units on the footprint of 10 houses.
Finding those density wins for sure. And to be clear, like this, I've been pretty cheeky here with you, and you've played along, but it's not about growth versus agriculture. Like they're complementing each other. And I always really appreciate your perspective, because it would be easy for you to say the opposite of what you've said here today, but you strategically look at problems and your solutions oriented in that way. So I really appreciate tapping in
And
to
it
that.
depends who I am. If I got an end of the road farm stand market, and which like great thing going on, like that supports, like I'd love to see more of that. But you need people for that to buy that. I have a friend that runs a community supported agriculture, and it's awesome. It's a great thing, and I'd love to see more of that. I just love it, but you need people to buy those veggie boxes, and they're not coming from Toronto to bring it there directly in that program. So somebody's pushed to. So I mean, it's just who are we asking in their opinion and how it affects them.
Yeah.
But making that decision, well, I think the decision's been made that growth is happening. That's been made. So now how do we do it the best we can?
What have I not asked you today? What have I not, dug into that I haven't thought of, that I haven't learned about, doesn't necessarily need to be specific to growth, but it could be, about soil. It could be about farm practices. Like what's missing in the municipal level that impacts what you do? Or am I just I'm the perfect mayor and I got to square it away? Putting you on the spot here, but
no, there's always easy things to rant about, that sort of stuff and that, but it doesn't generally solve a whole lot. So
have I brought a good perspective to the agricultural and the growth scenario? Like, am I bringing a one-sided argument forward, or is there something, the council should be more considerate of?
So I wrote a lot of comments because I'm being talked to today. And you do that, you get out there and talk to people. And, I'll be, if I want to be critical of things in the past, is the big farmer, the one that's growing, the one that's doing, is not generally the one that gets votes, is not the one that that the politicians necessarily want to talk to. So what we're getting at there is talking to commercial agriculture, the 20% that are growing, the 90%. I'm grateful to see that happening, because if I had to criticize things in the past, I've seen is politicians being out of touch, and not, what they see agriculture as. They haven't been out to see what it is today. They know what it was 30 years ago, and keeping relevant on it. So I'm so grateful to see that you make an effort to get out to for what I've seen, all sorts of facets of agriculture, but you're not sitting here telling me what agriculture is, and that's appreciated.
Oh no, I would never.
But if I was going to be critical, it's very easy, and you can see it out there with politicians that'll very happily tell me what agriculture is and should be.
Yeah.
And they can do that, but
they're wrong. I'll say,
they're not living it.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're not living
Their boots aren't on the ground.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think sometimes we try to perpetuate the narrative of what Norfolk is. Norfolk is Ontario's garden. Norfolk is a big player in agriculture. We are top producers in a lot of different things. We bring variety forward. We have big farmers. We have small farmers, and their value and their rights to their property and what they produce at the end of the day is all equal in my books. Yes. They're putting the work in, they're putting the investment in. A lot of them have made Norfolk what it is today. But that being said, change is inevitable. We are evolving, we are growing. We have to do it on our own terms, and we can't do it with strife and internal conflict and one-sided conversations. And, you know, if I had $1 for every time I talked to someone who said, I moved here because I like the way it is, we should stay this size.
Yeah.
I welcome you with open arms. Thank you for choosing Norfolk. Thank you for supporting our businesses. Thank you for coming here. Why do you get to be the last?
Yeah. No. And I agree. And I remind myself that I'm here because some Germans and some Italians were allowed to immigrate.
And ultimately, that's why I'm here. So I don't want to put my foot too far in my mouth. But so am I going to say, well, no, you shouldn't be able to come.
That's right.
Because Canada is a story of immigration and growth.
For sure.
And not that our story can't change and that we need to evolve and all that, but I have a hard time being too critical on people wanting houses.
Yeah.
And wanting to further their lives and this being a great place to do it. So
one thing before I close out, I want to just briefly touch on, are we good? Briefly touch on immigration with you in general because of the temporary farm workers and changes. And so I've been listening to some podcasts. I chatted with you very briefly about it a while back, but I haven't really heard much of it as of late. But on the federal level, they are talking about immigration. I have had countless conversations on, you know, our own local levels of government here within Norfolk. And really interesting perspective where people think we can't afford the infrastructure to grow. We need to shut down, you know, we need to pay for that first, not bring new people here, which I fundamentally disagree with because that is going to charge the tax and ratepayers of today, not tomorrow, for future growth, 1. 2, immigration contributes, like I look at Fanshawe College and the international students. Thank God they're here, keeping our school here, employment in our businesses, left, right, and center, and you know, temporary farm workers. And part of that conversation on the federal level was to maybe look at reducing those numbers. They've certainly reduced school international students a little bit, and it was unregulated. Okay. Then they briefly talked about doing the same for agriculture. There are multiple different streams. They haven't made any decisions yet, but it's all boiling down to that buzzword, which is, you know, the housing. We need to get the housing. We need to get the housing. You provide housing for anyone who joins the farm to come and work from a seasonal perspective. So what do you think about that? Like, is there just not enough dialogue happening with the agriculture industry that they're broad strokes saying we need to look at seasonal workers as a way to clamp down on immigration because of the housing crisis?
Hopefully it doesn't get to that point because that conversation was missed. So on the discussion around competing interests for housing. So yeah, I mean, build more housing is part of that. But the argument, if we have the floodgates opened on immigration and we can't handle it, I mean, there's an argument to that but on the farm side, there's very, very, very few instances you can find where you can go, well, having these people up to pick crops and all that are taking housing away from the market because it's 99% on-farm housing. Mm-hmm. It's very, very challenging to use anything other than on-farm housing. So I'm not as worried about that affecting the agriculture side. I do get scared of just fundamentally we get so out of touch that we don't need farming. We don't need agriculture. That scares me because we could decide that as a country and we can bring our food in. We can do that. We can get it from Mexico. We can, you know, and that works really good until it doesn't. Uh-huh. COVID helped with that narrative a bit. But the, policy around food security and having domestic production, if we have that, I'm not so worried about stopping farm people from coming into work because we need to support it. You need labor. But that's the thing. That's where policy scares me, because you can change it pretty quick and not know all the consequences. And agriculture is, although very, very important, it's not a lot of votes.
Which is so strange.
Yeah, that part of it scares me more. But in the short term, Right or wrong, I'm not too scared about them saying, no, don't bring in farm workers because they're not competing on housing.
Yeah, I agree.
But doesn't mean that somebody won't cross that T and dot that I and realize the disconnect there.
Yeah.
So
It's strange because there aren't a lot of industries where you need to provide housing for your employees.
Yeah.
Outside of
there's been, I mean, that in the agriculture one, that, you know, it's that was started in the 60s, I believe, and it has evolved around that and evolved around years and years of taking steps to demonstrate and ensure that this is having as much of the positive impacts and as minimal of the negative impacts as possible over that time period. So, I mean, there is a ton of process to make sure you're not taking Canadian jobs, which, yeah, so they can't see the quotations, air quotes, but there's a lot around that. And again, and I'm sure some of why we are where we are today is not taking Canadian houses. And so, yeah, and there's policy support to allow you to build that housing on farm for probably some of these reasons. So,
and you know, on the municipal level, you're mandated to get your water tested and have your bunk houses inspected, and like that probably in and of itself is an FTE, like an employee you could hire to bring in your workers, make sure they have adequate housing, make sure the housing meets the standards. Like,
yeah,
that is a job.
It just in our own little example, because there are a ton of farm operations and a lot, like we're a very small piece of the pie, just to get there's so much going on in Norfolk, but that's a few full-time jobs, bringing in 400 people and onboarding and everything that goes along with running housing. And there are a lot of local jobs that depend on seasonal workers, a lot.
Where are your workers coming from?
This year. So first of all, anyone locally, you have to be. It depends on the job. You have to be either 14 or 16. Not that long ago, I would have started more like at 10, and that was more common. But I still do hate telling a 12-year-old that wants to work that I'm not allowed to employ you. But that's a side thing. Because yeah, somebody who wants to work and saying no to just doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
That was a segue. But yeah, anyone locally that wants it and is available. Then from countries coming in that we're partnering with, Jamaica, Trinidad, Mexico, Guatemala, Barbados, El Salvador. But that's more of a strategy, try to work with as many countries as we can for risk management, because in 2020, when we had all Trinidad workers and the government of Trinidad decided that Trinidad nobody would be leaving, that had an impact on us. So it's been a risk management, and you see some of those things and come to appreciate it. Oh, okay, well, yeah, Canadian government is so bad and all this, and go, it's relative.
Yeah.
We got some really good things going on in Canada, but
Perspective.
we could do a lot better. Yes.
You know what I think about when you tell me all of that is the food. How amazing is the food on a lunch break on your farm with those different cultures colliding?
Well, you can go and you go into downtown Simcoe and experience it, because as an offshoot of all that, I think of a few restaurants. So the one, she's Bayesian background. Now they sell themselves as Jamaican, the food, but that's because her husband, I believe, is Jamaican too. So anyways, you get some of those players there. There's about 3 or 4 authentic Mexican spots.
Lily's and Tacos Tequila. We've got JK's out there.
I love to eat, and I'd often find myself, especially 10 years ago, wandering around the housing and kind of like a stray dog, just finding food. And
How many years ago?
I'll say 10, but not that long.
So the farmer's son is hanging around the bunkhouses.
Well, it's my neighborhood. That's
Yeah.
my neighborhood, right?
Fair point.
I walked outside in my neighborhood where the was a housing on farm. That was my neighborhood. So yeah, we didn't have as many cultures then in that on the farm. But I will say since then, I love all food. Trini food's pretty special.
Yeah.
You get because they have such a cultural mix in Trinidad in terms of just the background of that country. They get these really neat flares and that and of different things. But I'm never saying no to anything.
Yeah, no, don't do it. Don't turn down a meal. That would be... Okay, so then apple or cherry juice? What are you picking?
Cherry juice and a cool story there. Sleepy Girl mocktails. Have you heard of that?
I have.
Yeah.
TikTok viral. Have your proceeds just shot up through the roof? You're selling all this...
Sour cherries is quite a niche market, and North America probably had 3 years worth of inventory of juice cherries, and it's like, oh, what are we gonna do with these as an industry and all that, and then all of a sudden, barrels and barrels of juice cherries started getting sold, and like, what's going on? Oh, pull up this TikTok video.
Mocktail. Yeah, that is hilarious.
That inventory is pretty much like it's almost cleaned up.
Get out.
That 3 year inventory, and now the crop's coming on. We'll have new cherries in mid-July.
Power of social media. Why not? All right, apple or cherry pie?
I really like a good apple pie with no sugar added.
No sugar added.
To appreciate the apple and not the gel. There's no gel in this pie. This is
Okay.
a lot biting into an apple, and I do have a pie lady. She's in her 70s, and she makes really good pies, and I'm a bit of a snob on pies.
Okay, that's fair. I can get behind that. And then last question, what team are you voting for at the August 11th Farms of Norfolk football?
Yeah, well, no, Schuyler Farms.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. What a fun tournament.
Yeah.
And we've almost won quite a few years in a row now.
I really enjoy your team. First of all, they come with garbage cans and drumsticks and car parts, and they flip them over and make the most amazing live music that they're just banging on the drums. They're making up songs as they go. They have their red and black colors. They've got their jerseys on. The football itself, I'm not a soccer girly. I'm not a football fan, but any live sport I will watch, and the skill level is insane. It is so good. But my honest to God favorite is the smack talk on the side, and your team, they are something else, let me tell you. So highly encourage everyone to go out, grab a bite to eat. August 11th, West Street soccer pitch.
Love bouncy castles too, bring with kids.
Yeah. And you know what? One, it's cool, and the sport is amazing, and it's great. Two, the food's there. Three, it is the least we can do to have one day of the year go and support our farm workers, what they do for our economy and our community. Go and watch them, go cheer them on, go embrace them. They are a part of this community. It's about time we start making them feel like it. And it's amazing. It's a must-see event, and I genuinely look forward to it every year. So August 11th, 9 till 4, West Street. Go Schuyler Farms.
Yeah, thank you. And this will be the year. This will be the year we win. But regardless, I got me thinking too. Here's another cool one. You mentioned a bit about embracing it. Thursday and Friday nights in downtown Simcoe. It's packed. It's fun. It's a really cool spot. Yeah. I don't know if that's the messaging that always gets out there, but a fun night out and experience it in the food. I think there's been a bit of, you just don't go downtown because it's busy.
Yeah.
But rural Ontario, we have a busy downtown on Thursdays and Fridays, and beyond Thursdays and Fridays. Those are the big ones. But
it's a lot of fun.
People who want to shop local and support local, and we need to get these stores open later because there is foot traffic, there is cash, there is camaraderie, there are friends to be made. But yeah, what other community can say without a doubt they're going to get an influx of that many people in their downtown core every Thursday and Friday night? They don't. That's not reliable numbers unless you're in the GTA, and we have that here, and it's really neat. It's really neat to see. I like to sit out in my office window and watch the guys roll in. Quite often they'll park in this parking lot and they'll just walk downtown and they just descend on the town, and it is the neatest thing to see. They're so happy to be not working and out for a night out, and yeah, really, really cool, really unique.
It's pretty easy to spend $8 on a beer when you've been working all week.
Yeah.
And go get a nice meal, and
Yeah.
oh, it's fun. It's fun. It's nice to see it busy because again, it's just there's a story there because where in rural Ontario,
Yeah.
I mean the normal story is just about nobody being there.
Yeah.
So yeah.
No, we've got it going on. We're pretty cool. Well, thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing your position, your opinion, and thanks for all the work you do, the extra work you do in your industry. And actually, funny fact, you know the story, but years ago I went to Blue Mountain. I got out of town and had a night out with my girlfriends, and I'm sitting at a bar, and we're having a bite to eat, and these two gentlemen had finished a golf game. They're sitting at the table beside us, and it was a bachelorette, so they thought that they'd send a couple shots over, and we were chatting with these guys, and there's COVID, so there's screens up between us, right? And they were trying to play this big game that they were farmers, and they were apple growers, and they were this, that, and the other. And we were from, where are you girls from? Well, we're from Norfolk County. Oh, yeah. No, we grow apples too, and we do that down here. And I don't know how it came up, but we name dropped you. We said, oh, well, maybe you know Brett. And his whole demeanor changed. He was like, oh, okay, like I'm a small farmer compared to Brett. But they knew who you were.
Small industry.
Yeah, but now they had nothing but great things to say about you. It's a small world, and you put Norfolk on the map, and you make us look good, and I'm proud to call.
Well, they would also know at that point that maybe that word could get out that they're buying drinks for this bachelorette going on, especially because knowing the individuals. I mean, not that it matters that they're in their 60s, but yeah. Yeah, no, that might all of a sudden, okay, maybe I just got to calm down a bit here.
Yeah, maybe I got to dial it back. In our defense, I think it was like 7 o'clock. We were eating salad. Yeah. Like it was, but it was just, it was cool. It was a cool moment for me because I'm always so proud of home. And everywhere I go, I love to talk about it. And yeah, so I was like, oh, yeah, Brett's my friend. And then, like the whole they were trying to play it up, and they were shot down. They weren't as big of a farmer as you, and it was cool. So
but a theme here that I like is celebrating what we are, and celebrating a bit what we're becoming, and rolling with some of the things that we're not going to change. So we can talk about how awful it is that there's houses being built, or we could also talk about how the pros of that and some of the people's bringing to the community and the business it's attracting, and we go on both sides of everything, and I think celebrating what we are and what we can be in the general.
Yeah, and keeping our history, our heritage, our culture alive, growing in scale where we don't need to be the GTA, but make sure that we continue to share that story and do what we can to preserve ag.
And you and I are never going to. If we wanted this to be the GTA, we can't. It's not up to us.
Fair.
But
we could start to tie ourselves to trees. I'm not above a full protest every once in a while, but yeah, no, you're right. So let's deal with the cards we have and the facts at hand, and get our seat at the table and shape it the way we want to see it. Anything else?
That made me think a bit about adding to this topic on land use.
Yeah.
Because again, it's about what matters and what do we care about. So talking about prime agricultural lands, we've also in Norfolk planted a lot of acres to trees, to forestry, and that's great. So what matters? It depends who you ask. So environment's important. Agriculture is important. People are important. So, I mean, that's also just throwing another loop at this because we get very polarized on, well, it has to be prime agricultural land and it has to be farming. And like a lot of that prime agricultural land is also being put to other stuff, and that's okay. Because it's not, it's an opinion. It's an opinion and it's not my choice.
What about, I'm drawing a blank on the name right now, the land trust.
We think of nature conservancy.
Yeah. What do you know about that? Lots of land banks.
Yeah, but so people want to, fundamentally, people want to see more land going to straight environmental services and making it happen. So
it's okay to take farmland out of production if we put it towards environmental services, but not housing?
That's all opinions is what I'm saying, and I don't get to choose. So I could sit here and say everything has to be agriculture, and that's the only use for this land. But that's not putting a lot of considerations into it. And at very, very basic levels, we need to protect environment, which I get more passionate with the win-wins and going, what are ways of farming and doing this, and having biodiversity, having climate resilience, and having the win-win of that, because there's times that you can have both, but also that I'm going to protect all this farmland, but let's get rid of all people. It's not going to be used for farming at some point. Like you need to feed people too. So this all comes together, and it's not an easy. There's not an easy answer.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
All right. Well, this was really fun.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice to see you, and we'll see how many people tune in and what they have to say. But maybe we can do a part 2 on this in a little while and see what happens with this growth plan.
Yeah, well, it's fun for me. Thank you.